When my family and I moved into the new house on the outskirts, I thought we were just looking for a peaceful place, away from the hustle and bustle of the city. The house looked old, but there was something strangely attractive about it. The walls were full of the marks of time. The wooden doors creaked when opened, and the wooden steps were worn. All of it gave me the feeling that this house had a long story behind it. I didn't think much about the former owners when we moved in. All we knew was that the house had belonged to an elderly couple, and they had left after Mr. Frank, the husband, passed away. The wife, Mrs. Eleanor, was an elderly woman, but according to the neighbor, she still often wandered through the garden and took care of the plants she had been growing for years. However, strange things started happening just a few nights after we moved in. One evening, I was watching TV with my little daughter, Sarah, in the living room. The room was quiet. Only the soft yellow light from the lamp lit the walls. Sarah suddenly looked up and asked, "Mom, who's that?" I turned around, and Sarah pointed to a blurry figure at the end of the room. At first, I thought she was imagining things, because there was no one in the room except for Sarah and me. I told her it was just the shadow of the furniture, but her eyes stayed fixed on the corner of the room where the figure had disappeared. The odd feeling unsettled me. The next night, while I was asleep, I suddenly woke up with a jolt. In my dream, I saw a woman standing right by the bedroom door. She wore a long dress. Her hair was silver, and her eyes were deep and full of emotion. Although I couldn't see her face clearly, I felt like I knew her. She stood there, silently, as if waiting for me. I couldn't move, just stood there, staring at her helplessly. After a moment, she smiled faintly and quietly walked away. I woke up, and the feeling was still very vivid. I could remember every detail of the dream, as if she had actually been there, right next to me. It felt like it wasn't just a dream. Since then, I began to have similar dreams every night. And strangely, my daughter started having the same dreams. One night, Sarah woke up in the middle of the night and told me, "Mom, she's here again." She was standing by my bedroom door, staring at me with sad eyes. At first, I thought Sarah was just being haunted by her dreams. But when I saw the look of fear in her eyes, I started to worry. The strangest thing happened when my husband, Mark, started dreaming about Mrs. Eleanor. We had never talked about her before, but one night, Mark woke up with a pale face and said he had seen Mrs. Eleanor standing in the living room, holding an old flower vase. She looked at him with such sadness. Mark said that in the dream, she didn't say anything, just stood there, staring at him as if she was looking for something. The coincidences started to unsettle me. We were all dreaming about the same person, and she didn't just appear once. It was as though she was still living in this house, going about her daily routines, moving through the space that my family and I were occupying. Mrs. Eleanor had left her mark on this house, traces that couldn't be erased. One morning, while I was tidying up, I accidentally found an old photo in the closet. It was a picture of Mrs. Eleanor and her husband. In the photo, they were standing by a wall in the old living room next to a grand piano. But what stopped me was the look in Mrs. Eleanor's eyes in the photo. It was exactly the same as the look I had seen in my dream. I couldn't explain the feeling when I looked at that photo. The next day, I decided to find out more about Mrs. Eleanor. I went to visit one of her old neighbors, and they told me that she had been very fond of the house. She had taken great care of the garden and had a passion for preserving old things in the house. However, she couldn't bear the shock of her husband's death, and afterward, she became frail and rarely went outside. People weren't sure if she had passed away in the house, but stories about her were still passed on from one person to another. The strange feeling didn't stop. Even though I tried to change everything in the house, trying not to think about Mrs. Eleanor, her presence remained in our dreams. It was as if she hadn't been able to leave this house, and what was left behind were invisible traces we couldn't explain. To this day, whenever I look at the armchair in the living room, I still get the feeling that Mrs. Eleanor is sitting there, watching us, with her gentle yet deeply searching eyes. I used to think that things like this only happened in movies or ghost stories told to scare children. I'm 28, a software engineer, living alone in a second-floor apartment in a quiet suburb of Portland. I don't believe in ghosts. I believe in data, logic, and things that can be explained. But after what happened last October, I began to understand that some things can happen whether you believe in them or not. It all started on an ordinary week, just like any other. I work from home, leave the house only to go grocery shopping or for a jog around the neighborhood. That night, I went to bed earlier than usual, around 10 p.m. I remember it clearly because I was feeling quite tired. The bedroom was nothing special. A single bed against the wall, a desk near the window, a soft yellow nightlight, and the curtains drawn shut. I always leave the bedroom door slightly ajar because I don't like the air to feel stuffy. Around the middle of the night, I was awoken by a strange sensation. There was no loud noise, no unusual light, just a feeling, like someone was staring at me in the dark. I opened my eyes, and the room was still dark and silent. I was about to turn over to my right to find a more comfortable position when I distinctly felt a cold hand touch my left calf, just outside the blanket. I froze for a few seconds. It wasn't a hallucination. I could clearly feel the cold, rough skin. It wasn't pulling, wasn't gripping. It was just gently resting on my leg, as though testing if I was still awake. I pulled my leg back instinctively and immediately turned on the nightstand light. The room was empty. I thought maybe I had been dreaming, but I still remembered the sensation of that hand, as if it had just happened seconds ago. I stayed awake until morning, sitting at my desk, trying to rationalize what had just happened. The window was still locked, and there was no sign of anyone having broken in. The next night, I left the nightlight on brighter and locked the bedroom door. I also set my phone to record overnight, just to check. I didn't sleep well, and at 3:17 a.m., I was awakened by a chilling sensation that spread from my feet to my chest. I opened my eyes and heard breathing, very close to my ear. But when I sat up, the room was still empty. Nothing. The next morning, I checked the recording. In the 6 hours of footage, there was only the sound of me turning over, some heavy breathing, and a brief moment. Right at 3:17 a.m., there was a faint whisper, like a whisper barely audible. "I see you." I couldn't make out who was speaking or where it came from. I sent the recording to a friend who works in audio. He confirmed that it wasn't an echo or a recording error. The sound came from very close to the microphone. I began losing sleep. I slept with the lights on, using headphones with white noise. But every night, I would wake up around 3 a.m. with the sensation that something was touching me. Sometimes it was a hand, other times my back. Occasionally, it was just a freezing, cold feeling, like someone was standing near the bed. Some nights, I would wake up and find the wardrobe door wide open, even though I was sure I had closed it. I started journaling every night. A week later, I left the apartment and stayed with my brother. During that time, nothing happened. No strange sensations, no whispers. I began to think it was just stress. But when I returned to the apartment to collect a few things, I stayed the night because I was too tired. And at 3:06 a.m., I woke up to that same hand touching my foot. This time, stronger, as if it were trying to pull me off the bed. I screamed and jumped up. The light was still on, but under the bed, there was a small indentation in the carpet, as if someone had been sitting there for a long time. I packed up my things and moved out the very next day. I never went back. This didn't make me believe in ghosts, but it made me believe that sometimes something can touch you without needing to show itself, without any sounds, just enough to leave an unforgettable mark. And if you ever feel someone touching you while you sleep, don't be too quick to think it's just a dream. My name's Nate. I'm 28, and I live alone in a small 2-bedroom house just outside of Portland, Oregon. It's the house I grew up in, left to me by my grandfather after he passed away. The place is old, wood floors that creak no matter how softly you walk, thin walls that let in every sound from outside, and that kind of countryside silence that somehow makes every small noise stand out more. Living alone never really bothered me. I was used to the quiet. I liked it, actually. But about 6 months ago, I started having these dreams. They were strange. Not horrifying at first, just unsettling. I was always in my living room, but it was nighttime, and I was standing in the corner, looking at the fold-out guest bed I kept for visitors. And every single time, someone was lying there under the blanket. I couldn't see a face, just the shape of a person lying still, like they had been there a long time. At first, I shrugged it off. A weird dream, nothing more. But it kept happening, night after night. Same dream, same corner, same figure. And every time I woke up, I was drenched in sweat, my heart pounding like I'd just outrun something. So I did what anyone might do. I folded up the guest bed, tied it shut with a strap, and shoved it tight against the wall. Just a dream, right? But the next night, it was back. In the dream, the bed was unfolded again, and someone was lying on it, just like before. I told my friend Brian about it. He'd crashed at my place a couple of times. He laughed and said I needed to cut back on caffeine. I laughed with him, but deep down, I knew it was something else. The dreams didn't feel like dreams. They felt like memories. Like I'd actually been in that room, watching someone sleep where no one was supposed to be. After a few more weeks, I decided to set up a camera, a small one, hidden on the bookshelf, pointing toward the living room. It started recording around 11 p.m. I just wanted to see if I was sleepwalking or doing anything weird during the night. The next morning, I reviewed the footage. Everything looked normal until around 2:47 a.m. The room was still. Then suddenly, there was a flicker in the footage, like interference or something passing quickly in front of the lens. A few seconds later, I watched the guest bed unfold. Slowly, like someone was pulling it down from the wall. But no one was there. Not me. Not anyone. Then, clear as day, I saw the blanket shift, as if something, or someone, had just lain down. I jumped out of my chair and immediately stopped the video. I was shaking. I knew I had locked every door and window. No one could have gotten in. I called the police. They came out, walked through the house, checked every room, every lock, every crevice. No signs of forced entry. No fingerprints. Nothing. The bed was folded up again, just like I had left it the night before. I started to think I was losing my mind. A few nights later, I tried something new. I decided to sleep in the living room. I set the camera back up, pointed at the guest bed, and lay down on the couch facing it. I stayed awake as long as I could. Around 2:30, my eyelids got heavy. I must have drifted off, and I dreamed again. But this time, I wasn't just standing in the corner. I was sitting on the couch, exactly where I'd fallen asleep. and I saw the figure on the bed. Sit up. I couldn't make out a face, just a void where it should have been, like smoke shaped like a person. And then it said, in a voice that wasn't loud, but somehow filled the whole room, "Why are you sleeping in my spot?" I woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. The camera had fallen to the floor. The battery was dead. No recording. That was the last straw. The next morning, I dragged the bed out back, broke it into pieces, and burned it. I moved into the room my grandfather used to sleep in. Since then, the dreams stopped. I haven't seen anything, haven't felt anything. But sometimes, when I walk through the living room late at night, I still feel like someone used to sleep there. And that, maybe, just maybe, they're still waiting for me to come back. Thanks for watching until the end. If you have a creepy or unexplainable story of your own, something that still gives you chills, feel free to send it to my email. I'd love to hear it, and maybe even share it in a future episode. Stay safe out there, and don't forget, some nightmares don't end when you wake up.